David, QB2 in the class, Julian Lewis. He's reclassified. Tell us about this youngster.
Yeah, Julian Lewis. He's listed around 6 foot, 180. He plays for Carrollton High School in Georgia. So he's in 7A division. Plays good competition. His strength of schedule is 40, and he's committed to USC. So he's got a really quick release. He has really quick footwork in general. He's really light on his feet, which I like. This ball right here goes 55 yards. So he's got a decent arm. His ball velocity, max ball velocity, is in the 50 to 52 range, which is around average-ish. He's 16 years old. So that's around average. Really good statistically. Like, he's already got 700 attempts on the board. He's got 66% completion percentage. He's over 10% yards per attempt, all that stuff. He was groomed quite a bit. He started with like a private quarterback coach when he was really young, like really, really young. And so even though he's reclassified from 2026 class to 2025 class, like he's probably played more football than any other quarterback in this class. So he's very polished passer, a quick processor, gets the ball out quick. I think he's kind of like a point guard type guy. We were kind of talking before the show, like who he reminded of. I think he's somewhere he's similar to Julian Sayin from the previous class, where he's got super clean mechanics. He's already very polished. Like, he played some basketball in middle school, but for the most part, he's just a one sport athlete, very specialized. He's playing football all year round. So yeah, he's very polished. He's accurate. The other guy here reminded me a little bit is Bryce Young. He probably doesn't have the same arm strength at this stage. But I thought, like, he can create outside the pocket. He's not going to run. So if we're thinking about a fantasy lens, that's the part where it's a little off-putting for me, at least. In 2 seasons, he has 37 carries for 129 yards and no rushing touchdowns. So I would say he's a very good quarterback, but it's hard to project him to get as good as some of these other guys have. Higher ceilings, basically, is what it comes down to. And he's got a very slight frame in general. He looks like he has narrow shoulders. I don't know if he can hold, and that's why we're thinking kind of Julian Sayin, Bryce Young type guy. I don't think he can hold a ton of weight. I don't know if he's really going to ever he's not going to get design runs. I wouldn't think too much. So, and maybe there's like I don't know if people just say that because he's smaller, he has more of a chance to get injured, but I don't know. He probably can't hold much more than 200, 205 area. So, yeah, I mean, good quarterback, maybe not the highest ceiling in the class.
Fair enough. I was super excited about him after he threw for over 4,000 yards as a true freshman, but dialed back a little bit as a sophomore. And then when you really start thinking about all the things that you brought up, I agree with you. Matt, I will throw in a couple things at the end, but what do you think about Julian Lewis here? Should he even be the QB2 in this class from some of the guys you've seen?
Yeah, I think what David said is pretty spot on. I can't really disagree with any of that. I think when it comes down to it, with quarterbacks, especially when we're talking about the top quarterbacks, we're looking for their heavy upside. And I find it hard to believe the NFL is going to be on a guy who has such a small frame, a relatively average arm that isn't a runner. I mean, it just doesn't happen. How many first-round picks do you see like that? I mean, he definitely, at the moment at least, he's still young. Who knows how he can physically develop still. But, he definitely profiles as more of a career backup than a long-term starter at this point from a physical standpoint. So I think that's really going to hold back his grade for me, especially in this quarterback class where I like a lot. It might be better than the 2022 class, which we all liked a good bit and, hasn't turned out that great so far. And a lot of these guys have really high end physical tools as well. And so it's going to be hard for me to put him over some of those guys when, I think he can be a really good college quarterback, but once it's time for the draft, I think, the teams are probably not going to be that envious over him at the moment.
Yeah. And, let's be honest. There are things like the fact that if Bryce Young doesn't get it together, he was not a tremendous runner a la Kyler Murray. I know he can kind of scramble a little bit, but slight frame, smaller guy. If he doesn't work out, that is going to make people question that mold. It just happens. The NFL is a copycat. They do stuff like that, whether it's right or wrong. But if Bryce Young fails, smaller, not elite runners are going to definitely, and if he would have succeeded, people would be like, look at Bryce Young. We can make that out of this guy. So, I think that narrative is going to be there, good or bad, by the time Julian Lewis comes, because I think that's a decent comp. And these types of players, I always think about Drew Brees, where if Drew Brees had not been in that exact beautifully perfect system, both in college and with the Saints, I'm not sure he's a fantasy producer, but he was able to be that point guard, throw a million passes a game, rack up yards and touchdowns, and he was great. But you needed a perfect specialized system to maximize everything about Drew Brees. So, you're just talking about he has tools that can be successful. He's just not a set it and forget it guy where he's going to succeed any which way because he's got a million ways to succeed. He probably exceeds in a few ways. And if we can maximize that, great. I pretty much agree though. I was excited before I really cracked into his, measurables and looking at the tape. Just 4,000 yards as a true freshman is just bonkers. But I watched the whole game for Carrollton against a pretty good school. Now I can't remember, maybe one of the Cobb County schools, but from last year, the accuracy was okay. It wasn't incredible. I thought Bryce Underwood's accuracy was a little bit better. I saw a few balls, easy little screens stuff to the running back where it's over their head. It wasn't, he also didn't do a lot of daring throws where I was like, holy crap. He, foresaw that window and put it in there. It was just a lot of design stuff. I just wasn't overly impressed, although he, like you said, you can tell he's worked with a quarterback coach, all that good stuff. Very, very polished. And to not be a total Debbie Downer, the good news is he's going to USC. He's going to play under a Lincoln Riley system. And, unless Lincoln Riley, turns into a pumpkin, that he just is a fantasy gold mine, both on defense and offense. So he stays at USC and doesn't get fired because they're not living up to expectations. The offensive situation there is just elite. So we like that for CFF. I wouldn't be too worried about his college production. I think, though, when we're talking about ultimate NFL, everything you said makes sense.